Dr. Saskia Corns. I'm Assistant Professor of the Practice at the Franklin Humanities Institute at Duke University and the Program Director at the Duke Campus Farm. It's a true delight to be able to share the work of this Story Plus team with the project title, What This Land Has Seen, the Past and Future of the Duke Campus Farm. So more than 10 years ago, Duke undergraduate students founded the Duke Campus Farm, or DCF, a 1-acre working organic farm 7 miles from Duke's main campus in the Duke Forest. Their primary aim at that time was to provide themselves and others with direct experience of the joys and hard work of growing real food. Over the last decade, the farm has evolved from a student-led interest group into a more fully fledged university program with a broader mission to catalyze positive change in the food system. As the farm celebrates its 10th anniversary, we wanted to share the story of DCF and its positive impact on students and offer appreciation to all those in the Duke and Durham communities whose brains and brawn have grown our food, built our soils, and expanded our program. In telling the story of the farm, we also wanted to honor the endurance of the land itself and the suffering of enslavement and displacement it and its communities have witnessed. At the center of this project, then, is a question that we're grappling with as people living in the United States. Can we tell these stories as part of a cohesive whole? And if so, how? How can we celebrate what has been achieved and acknowledge what has been sacrificed for this achievement in order to work collectively toward repair? We've been supported in this inquiry by Story Plus, the Duke Campus Farm team, and by some dynamic, kind, and thoughtfully critical researchers, including the incredible Nikki Locklear, who will introduce herself and the rest of the team.
In my role as graduate mentor and project manager, I've had the opportunity to work closely with both Saskia and our undergraduate researchers every step of the way. While I introduced them to history methods and assisted them in crafting research questions, they gave me priceless teaching and mentorship experience. I've been impressed throughout these 6 weeks by the passion, creativity, and profundity they brought to every question and each discussion. Tyler Edwards, Ella Dunham, and Sierra Winters are each thoughtful and diligent researchers. I'm so proud of them and the work that they've accomplished this summer, which they will now explain to you in their own words.
Hi, I'm Ella. Our project is centered around land history, and so that means we spent a significant amount of time trying to connect with the stories of the people who have tended to the land before us. And although this project is virtual, we want to recognize that Duke and the Duke Campus Farm are part of the unceded territory of the Eno, Occaneechi, Shoko, Atchishir, and Chakori nations, who were forcibly removed from their homes. We also want to highlight that more than 1,100 members of these nations have joined together in the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi in Alamance County, about 30 minutes to the east of us. And we invite you to visit their website and social media to learn more about their history directly from the people who know it best. And so knowing this history, we ask ourselves, how can we better take care of the land as it also takes care of us? One answer we found is to engage in biocultural restoration, or the healing of place-based relationships alongside the simultaneous revitalization of cultures and the environment. In other words, we, like DCF, have drawn upon the rich reservoirs of Indigenous knowledge and the traditions of enslaved people across the region to memorialize and reconnect with the land and with each other.
When it came time for us to think about how we wanted to present our research, we realized that we needed a platform that would allow us to show the connections between what each of us studied and how those themes persist throughout time. Dr. Starling Gold introduced us to Miro, and we instantly thought it was awesome. Our themes are represented on this board in the large circles with smaller annotations throughout. It functions a lot like Prezi in that when you visit our board in your own time, you should navigate by zooming into our different sections to see the many different layers of information available. Unlike Prezi, there are a few spots around the board where we invite you to engage and share your own thoughts about our content by annotating the board yourself. You can also look for the icons in the legend at the top left of the board to find specific types of research. Finally, the photos that we're showing in this presentation represent the themes that tie our project together. You'll notice that the icons directly correspond with the photos in the center of the board, all of which derive from my part of the project, which highlighted a space at the Duke Campus Farm, which has been used to discuss land history from the very beginning. It's called the Kakalaki plot, after an affectionate nickname for our state. There, plants like okra, cowpeas, and colored cotton, which were grown in the gardens of enslaved people for their own personal use, are grown alongside corn, squash, and tobacco, plants that are used by indigenous people as food and for ceremonial purposes. In other parts of history and today, some of these plants have been completely transformed into cash crops and tools for violence against people and the land. Having these plants on the farm acts as a sort of memorial for the people who once cared for them. When people interact with these plants on tours, they are given a physical method of connecting with those communities. I spent the majority of my time in this program attempting to capture how the Kakalaki plot has changed over time, how it can be used to start conversations about land history, and beginning the work of putting the rich base of knowledge and stories from those tours that currently exist mostly in an oral form into something that can be shared with more people. To experience what I came up with, look around the board for audio snippets from the wonderful interviews I conducted with 3 of the current and former members of the Duke Campus Farm staff, Abijah Gaddis, Emily Sloss, and Emily McGinty. We also used the Kakalaki plot to create a framing device for our project, with which Ella will explain further.
Thank you, Tyler. So why corn? You may have noticed that flint corn is the center image for our project. This species of corn has been planted on this land for millennia, first as a part of the Three Sisters story in agricultural practice, wherein corn is planted with legumes and squash to aid in each other's growing process. Later, during the settlement of the Couch family, they planted flint corn over the course of 100 years, and in the process, destroyed the soil. Currently, the Kakalaki plot grows various species of corn each season, continuing on the legacy of the land. One of the biggest discoveries I made during this project was that the Couch family were slaveholders. They enslaved over 40 people during their time of working the land. Many of these lives and stories have been lost, the only memory of them written in estate papers to be passed down from father to children. So I implore you to read each name of the enslaved people found under this bubble to begin to grapple with this erasure. They erase not only human lives, but non-human. The practice of shifting cultivation, which is the constant clearing of land when yields begin to be too low, increased erosion rates and acidified the soil. DCF continues to participate in biocultural restoration and indigenous place thought by reconnecting people to the land and seeing the land and all it carries as having their own agencies, wants, and needs. This can be done in many ways, and we invite you to participate in the Who versus What interactive section of this board. Many of these initiatives to promote biocultural restoration are even student-led, and Sierra will speak more on this.
Thanks, Ella. So student projects at DCF are embedded in this concept called embodied knowledge. So what exactly does that mean? Well, a big surprise for me coming into this summer of research was that we all approached this term with different interpretations and definitions. But ultimately, what embodied knowledge and embodied learning means at DCF is really digging your hands into the soil or having conversations and interviewing other community members to learn from them. It's something that you can't learn in a textbook. You actually have to be out in the field, so to say. So the lessons that you learn in embodied knowledge, embodied learning will last longer than if you simply read it in a textbook. And we also get to interact with other living beings and learn from them. Those living beings can be non-human or they could be human. And usually at the farm, some kind of positive contribution will be made. This might be a policy recommendation or a new farm feature. These student projects are both curricular connections with classes, but they can also be student farm crew projects. It has been everything from a greenhouse design to a dance performance by an MFA student. We also have a program called Duke Immerse, and they run a program called Imagining the Future of Food. It works closely with the farm. It really emphasizes the interdisciplinary aspect of embodied knowledge, and I found this interdisciplinary nature of learning present also in the Story Plus experience, which I'm sure many of you have noticed as well. So as we conducted this research and came together, we found a few next steps and action plan for the farm as well as for community members. And we have a few suggestions that we'd like to outline here. First would be more hands-on programming. Another suggestion is a centralized location for the student projects that I just discussed so that the community and other students can learn from each other. And third, we have the suggestion to continue to build relationships with migrant farm workers. DCF has done this in the past by forming a connection with SAF or Student Action with Farm Workers. and that's an area that they can really delve more into. At the same time, we acknowledge that not all stories can be recovered, that not everything can be restored. And so we're continually looking for ways to respect and recognize that fact. As we conclude, we'd like to stress that we believe that understanding history while simultaneously engaging our contemporary community stakeholders is integral to making a lasting, holistic, and positive change. And ultimately, we don't want ourselves or our audience to limit the concept of biocultural restoration to what we've studied at the Duke Campus Farm. So we encourage you to think about these themes and questions in relation to your own land, where you've come from as well. We welcome any questions and look forward to hearing your reflections. And please, 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 if you have time, we invite you to explore this board further because there are so many nooks and crannies that hold such gems of information. Thank you.